Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee Hour. Just to get your week, we're at the, guess what? Hump day. We're at the middle of the week, so you've made half your money this week, and you're going to make the other half at the end, towards the end of the week, and you're going to get that payday. Don't spend it all in one place, but again, you're not there yet, but you did join us for Coffee Hour. If you've never joined me before, Coffee Hour is a morning electrician dedicated show. It talks about just about anything. Obviously, we lean more towards talking about the National Electrical Code and all kinds of codey things involved. But at the end of the day, it's about what you want it to be. So remember, if you want to get a topic discussed on Coffee Hour, all you got to do is go to paulabernathy.com and submit your topic request on that website. Sponsored by Wix, costs you nothing. You can also ask code questions there as well. And they may be featured on an upcoming podcast or even share on today, or not today, a show like Coffee Hour. So do me a favor, go check it out at paulabernathy.com. That's where you can actually submit questions and interact with us. That's our portal to get directly to me through paulabernathy.com. Again, free service, sponsored by Wix. Hey, thanks for joining me today. As always, this show is sponsored by TradeHog. It is the latest and greatest AI tool for contractors. Answers all of those pressing questions that you may have in the field and allows you to get answers quickly. That's important. Quickly and accurately. And it's a learning model. So that means the more you ask it, the more it learns your situation. And it ends up being a resource that we also, if you're a premium member, you have a mobile app on your phone, okay? But you can get it from any browser, so you don't need the app. But that's just a perk for being a premium member over on the TradeHog.net. that type of thing. Okay. Anyway, enough of the sponsor. Thanks for joining me today. As always, I like to live vicariously through all of you, and that means you share who you are, where you're from, if you're a Fast Track student or not, or you've been in our programs before. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. If it's a very detailed question or it's been itching for you to ask a code question that is very long and detailed, if you find yourself having to type a whole lot, then it's probably better for you to submit it to paulabernathy.com, because what we don't like to do is we'll answer basic questions, but I don't like to bogart our lesson. In other words, take our lesson off track, especially when we have a scheduled topic. And of course, as you all know, this today is part 2 of a multi-part series talking about multi-family dwellings. See what I did there? See, part 2, multi-part and multi-family. Okay. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to do a quick recap of what we covered in part 1, just very quick. That way we get up to speed where we're at, and then we'll plug in to the rest of today's lesson. And of course, there will be a part 3 as well coming up on Thursday too. So anyway, without further ado, let's do some shout outs to some of the folks that have joined us this morning. Again, it's all about you folks joining us every day. Paul, welcome. Good morning. Glad to have you here. And Paul sets the tone for the hashtag win. So Paul is definitely hitting that in. And then Adam's joining us. So Adam has got that pint of coffee flowing. He's ready to go. We're spreading some knowledge. So thanks for joining us, Adam. And he also has the hashtag win going. So there you go. Joseph from New Jersey, thanks for joining us. Charlie's in the house. Tino is in the house. Tino, we're going to recap your question that you had last night. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Let's see. All the hashtag wins coming in. I love it. Nick, thanks for joining us this morning. Rob over on Fast Tracks Tubes, throwing it in with the win. Kendra, good morning. Glad to have you here. Cray's in the house from Nashville. Beto B, good morning. Glad to have you here. Morning, Rob. Glad to have you here. Abe's BBQ, good morning. Morning routine. Grab the coffee. I will have to confess, people over on TikTok. Oh, by the way, we are doing behind the scenes over on TikTok. It's always Master the NEC, by the way, if you ever want to go behind the scenes. Not the biggest TikTok fan in the world, but again, it's such an easy platform to do a stream. So we're going to keep it up until they ban me. And there's a high probability they could ban me anytime, because I am the bannable type of guy on TikTok. It seems like everything I post pretty much gets me a violation notice. Okay, so anyway, I'm out of coffee. So it's pseudo coffee hour because I don't have any coffee right now. But it is what it is, right? Let's see here. Erie, good morning. Glad to have you here. Melting Toast, I see you with that hashtag win. Good morning. Edgar, I see you in the house. Good morning. Glad you could join me. Joining me over on YouTube. Let's see here. Grace Field, good morning. Glad to have you here. Working on your second cup? Well, I would work on my second cup. I could look over and say, I could ask Jeff to bring me a cup, but that just don't feel like that would be a right thing to do. You know, he's not my, my coffee getter guy. And Darlene could do it, but she says no. All right, so Frank, what's up? Hump day. Good morning, Frank. Glad to have you here. Christopher's in the house. Christopher, thanks for joining us. Great having you here. Frank says positive vibes. Absolutely. I like to try to start every day. I'll tell you, folks, I was up till 1 o'clock this morning trying to polish off the final stuff for taxes and send it away and get to CPA to check it and do everything. In business, I'm going to tell you, if you're not in business, let me just tell you, and doesn't matter, you're not in business. The worst part of business for me is tax time. Not because I owe, because I always owe. There's no refunds here, okay? I just cut them a check for like 70 grand, right? So at the end of the day, it's because I underpay, so I end up having to write them money. And of course, they probably hit me with a penalty. I hate the IRS. Okay. So that's an audit trigger right there because, but it's just so, it's the whole process is so damn complicated, right? It's so convoluted. Why don't we just go to a flat tax and I'll collect 10% of every sale. You as a merchant collect 10%. You as a contractor collect 10%. And every month we'll send the government 10%. Hell, I'll do 10% for the federal and 3% for the state. That don't matter to me. Just make my life easier so I don't have to mess with these taxes each year because I hate it. Anyway, and it's all done. It gets done and I send everything off, but I just hate it. It's the worst part of the business to me. I can deal with rejection. I can deal with a client saying no. I can deal with failure. I hate doing taxes. I just hate messing with the paperwork. Okay. Hanging out on the upper deck, cable pull, lots of downtime, just waiting. Sit, hurry up to wait. There you go. Hashtag win everywhere. Mike, how many of you can relate to the tax stuff? You just hate it. Yeah, of course, personal taxes, I hate it even more because, it's just, anyway, that's a whole different story. Should have an episode on why I hate taxes. And it's not the fact that I got to pay them because I'm going to pay my taxes. I always pay I pay too much. That's the problem. I'd rather overpay. But at the end of the day, it's so easy to make a mistake, right? Like you could have something that you may deduct and then you accidentally deduct it again. And then you go through it and people do this and they're thinking, well, I'll do an amendment. But doing the amendment process is a pain in the ass. So you're like, screw it. It's not enough. Or you fix it, for the years when you do amendments. And it's just a mess, But anyway, even tax people make a mistake. And then you're like, why'd you make a mistake? It just happens. Anyway, good morning. Good morning. Coffee. Colombian beans. There you go. Grind your own coffee. My brother does that. He likes to grind his own coffee. He does this French press thing too, but I ain't got the patience for that. I'm like, K-cup, boom, let's go. Good morning, Jay. Good morning, Dominic. Glad to have you here. Terrence from up in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia can be right next door to me. I don't know how far you're away. I'm in Louisa County. How far are you, Terrence, from me? I'm in Louisa County, Virginia. Let's see here. Adam, this is why I have a pint in the morning. Lasts more than 2 hours. This is a pretty big cup, Adam. But my K-cup only fills it halfway. When I try to do 2 K-cups, it overflows. So I've got to find the right cup. It's going to, got to find the right cup. But I will. Buenos dias, amigo. Thanks for joining me, Red. And Red throws the hashtag win in there. What's up, Alex? Thanks for joining me. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see here. Adam says, add them to the F the Haters Club. If you're talking about the IRS, they've been on that club for a long time. I'm saying. Let's see here. Good morning. Taxes are garbage. Absolutely, they are. I joke. My wife gets Social Security, and they tax you, and then you take it as an income because they give you this 1099, right? And then you get taxed on it again. That is so full of crap. Okay, Grace is working on taxes right now. I hate it. Oh, reminder for anybody that's an LLC or a Chapter S corporation, your taxes, at least the paperwork for your federal, is due by the 15th of March, but it's on a Saturday, so you have until the 17th, okay? But you got to get that in there. So I had to do it because we are a Chapter S Corp, and I needed the K-1 so I could file my personal taxes, that type of thing. So you got to do it. So even if you were to file an extension, it still doesn't resolve you from any taxes you may owe on a personal side, even though I had a month that I could have gone because personal is not due until April 15th. I just usually get it everything to them and just get it over with, that type of thing. So I'd rather just get it done. What's up, Rob? Good morning. Hashtag the win. Haas says no. I have no idea what you're saying no to, bro, but whatever. Hector, good morning. Glad to have you, Hector, over on Facebook. Haas for win in Richmond, right down the road. Right down the road. Why do they tax if they can just print money? Yeah, that's a whole different story there. We talk about inflation. We talk about our national debt, knowing daggone well we'll never pay it off. So at the end of the day, they could literally wipe that slate clean and start over if they wanted, print more money. Of course, that creates inflation, yada, yada, yada. But again, it's all just numbers, right? Okay. Anyway, I don't like taxes. I don't even like the discussion of taxes. What's up, Richard? Good morning. Greetings. Oh, on a hospital building. Article 517, working on some of that kind of stuff. Okay. Dude, there you go. This should be a write-off for you helping the community. No, it was, in fact, up till this year, when it came to the corporation, most of the time I had to make sure that I stayed under 500 hours of active involvement a year so that I could be passive, because I have other projects that are different. And so the corporation, I had to try to stay passive, and I always got in trouble with my board of directors because that's how we created it in order for them to make decisions so that I could remain passive. It's all a tax thing. But in January, that all changed, and I was no longer passive. And so it became a real crap show. Okay. Anyway, what's up, Charlie? What are taxes? Uh-oh. Hold on. That's what up, Taxi. He says, what up? Cash is king, baby. Taxes, what are you talking about? You know you're supposed to pay taxes on cash. What's wrong with you? What's up from Memphis? Thanks for joining me. What does it say here? Come to California, we get taxed. We barely get taxed. Right. Yeah, that's a good one. Texas was probably, if somebody asked me, why did I move the company from Texas to Virginia? Because y'all know the backstory. I did it because of family health and all this kind of stuff. But as far as taxes, Texas is one of the best places to be, right? Because there is no state withholding tax. You only have the federal. You have corporation franchise tax, which means you really pay nothing unless you're doing millions and, a year in sale. I mean, high millions, and we're not, obviously. So, that was the best. So you come back to Virginia, a lot more taxes, state withholding tax. However, I will say, I paid close to $8,000 in property taxes back in Texas. Back in Virginia, it's a third of that. So it kind of balances out, maybe, kind of, but it didn't matter because I had to come back. We had to come back here anyway. But I tell you what sucks. This is kind of funny. I tell you what sucks is that Encore Prismium doesn't take Virginia withholding out. So my paycheck for that part of the company comes from Texas. I have to still pay that out of the check. So it's not a big deal. It's just that you have to coordinate it. I have to pay it. So you have to log in and pay the state separately, and it becomes just a whole muddy mess. You would think an $18 billion corporation with people all over the world could get Virginia sorted out and take my withholding out of a paycheck. You would think, right? Now, the paycheck I get from the Electrical Code Academy, and obviously I'm in Virginia, so that automatically gets taken care of. Shout out to QuickBooks Online. Thank you. But other than that, crazy how it is to keep track of this. So is it ripe for people to screw up? Absolutely. The whole system is ripe for people to screw it up. It is what it is. The tax document's like that thick, right? Anyway, we're bound to make mistakes, okay? All right, let's get into today's lesson, folks. Now let's go where we were. Okay, I get it's hard to see the screen, so I will, as always, dictate it to you. And yeah, actually, funny you should say that, Adam, that the Trade Hog, the Office one, really can help you because you can ask it tax questions. If you're filling out forms, you can ask it questions and it will bring back great answers. So that is actually a great thing, Adam, because it will do that. And it's just like ChatGPT will do. But the best thing about the Trade Hog is that the Office Hog It's, again, thinking about the business aspect when it gives a response versus Chat GPT just giving you a wild ass response. The Office back end does give a more concise, okay, that type of thing. What did Nepo say? Nepo says, "Can we ask it to pay our taxes?" Yeah, yeah. I think Trade Hog's probably broke right now. Probably not paying anybody's taxes. Okay, this is so that type of thing. So, what's Grace say? This is my first year doing taxes as an electrical contractor. It is over. I am so. Yes, Grace. Yeah, it is extremely overwhelming, even for me after all these years. My best advice to you is just advice to anybody. Okay, let's just do this real quick because we're going to do the lesson today. But you know what? This is what we're all about. We're all in business. We all do things. So this is good conversations. Grace, my best advice to you is I don't know how you do it now, and I'm not giving tax advice. Okay, what I'm saying is I would try to get a business specific credit card. Okay, like a Capital One business or whatever. Make every one of your purchases for the business on a business credit card, and preferably get one that gives you some interest, right? So 1% cash back or 2% cash back because you don't have to claim that. That's your money. And make that way it already kind of organizes. And if you did get audited, you could just hand them the printout from the credit card showing where it itemized things out, that type of thing, and make life simple. For years as a contractor, I tried to do everything with a check and keep a ledger and keep records, and what a mess. That type of thing. For me, I do everything even today. I have a Chase, not Chase, sorry, Capital One. I can't remember what it's called. Capital One. It's the green one. I don't know what it's called. But I have the Capital One, and it keeps track of all my business expenses. That's what I do. That's what I use. So there is absolutely maybe one check a year that we might write out of the company. Everything else, you better accept credit card because that's how we're paying, right? And it just makes life a little more simpler when it comes to that stuff. Now, as an electrical contractor, it's tougher. I get it. There's a lot of things that somebody may not take a check. I mean, may not take a credit card, but in today's world, most people take credit card. But for me, it just simplifies life, that type of thing, right? But my other advice to you is make sure you set your categories up early and make sure you always, if you can, life gets in the way. If you write a check, make sure you write what category it's in and just get it used to from the beginning, making sure everything's properly categorized. Not so much for taxes. Again, you can itemize it out or you can just lump it. Again, people say, well, that could trigger an audit. You know what? If they're going to audit you, they're going to audit you anyway. I mean, be honest with you. That little, because of where you put them in the categories, I think is a less chance of it. Has nothing to do with that. If they're going to audit you, they're going to audit you. If your number comes up, your number comes up. At least as long as you keep the paperwork and you can point to it and show. Even if you make a mistake, mistakes happen. There's forgiveness. Now, you may owe a penalty, you may owe a fee, you may have underreported something. And they're not going to put you in jail for it. You're going to pay it, and they'll adjust your return or they'll adjust your stuff, and you'll get right. They'll slap you on the hand. It's not like you're being fraudulent. It's not like you're trying to hide money. You made a mistake. So that's I think it probably, one of those misconceptions with the IRS is they're just looking after it to put you in jail. No, they just want to get what they think's their money. And so they'll work with you. Can't get blood out of a turnip, put you in jail, you ain't gonna get squat. So anyway, just keep good records and everything and take your time and you'll be okay. All right, let's get back to the lesson. All right. So let's kind of recap. As y'all guys and gals see what we've done to this point, we've already accounted. I'll just go back here. Okay, so we already accounted for our square footage. We already got our general lighting calculation from last time. Okay. We got our small appliance circuits from last time. If you don't know these numbers, go back and watch part 1. We got our laundry brand circuit. Again, there was one of them in these apartment complexes, and there are 12 apartment complexes. So if you're new today and you didn't do part one, you're going to be really confused. Okay, just listen and enjoy. Go back and watch part one. All right. And then we applied our demands, which is 220.45 in the 2023 edition of the NEC. We applied our demands, first 3,000 at 100%, the next 117,000 at 35%, any remainder over that at 25%. We did not have that, so we did the 35%, and that gave us the 31,080. And as always, Paul is my math guy, so he checked all the math. There you go. All right, now we add that 3,000 back, which gave us 3480. That was our general lighting and general use receptacles. And then we did our fasten in place appliances. Again, this is 12 apartment units, okay? They're all identical. So everything you see here is times 12, right? So that's how we got the 5,400 for the water heater, okay, which was 4,500, right? But what did we use? At 4,500, since we're doing the standard method, oh, excuse me, that's a dryer. So we're using 4,500, so we're just doing 4,500 times 12, right? And we did the same thing for the dishwasher, okay? We did the dishwasher 10 times 120. That's how we get the VA, and times 12. Same thing for all of these. Now, obviously we had 4 or more, right? Because we already have 4 water heaters. We have 12 actual. So we have 4 or more. So we were able to apply the demand factor of 75%. So we added all this up. That was 93,600. Multiply that by 75%. That was 70,020. So that was our value that we're using. Okay. And if you are new and you're saying, where is this nifty little form that we're talking about? Okay. That type of thing. Well, there's a nifty little form that we have. And let's see here. I lost my form. Bear with me. Hold on for a second. I lost TradeHog too. I don't know what I did. I clicked the wrong button or something. All right. Anyway, so there's a nifty little form that we have. So I will show you that real quickly. So just so you can see, we'll make sure everything's working. And of course, it's not working again. Wow. Okay. That's a shock. All right. So there you go. So there's your form right there. Okay. What's a disposer? In sink waste disposer, garbage disposer. Come on, bro. All right. So there's a nifty little form that's available to our Fast Track students. So make sure that you download that form in your program. Okay. Definitely want to make sure you get that. Okay. So that's a little form that we're filling out. Adam again, dude, you know what a disposer is. All right. Okay. So we've got all that. We did it. We did everything and we got our totals, right? Yada, yada, yada. That is our 70,200. And so, all right. Now, we worked our way. Oh, we did the dryer, clothes dryer. Now, the clothes dryer was 27,600. And Tino sent me an email last night. Tino, I hope you don't mind me saying it. I just want to make sure everybody understands where we got the 27,600. Remember, the clothes dryer is 5,000 watts or the nameplate, whichever is greater. In our case, it was the clothes dryer was 5 kW. Okay, we have 5 kW. All right, so 5 kW is the default. So at this point, we had the 5 kW, and so we're like, where do we get the values for the 5 kW? All right, so if you go to here, I will show you. We go to the NEC because this one is working. We'll share this tab. Here it says, again, then use 5 VA or the nameplate, whichever is greater, right? And that's what we did. In our case, it was 5, so it didn't matter. And then if you go down here, since we had 12 of them, because it's 12 unit complex, right? We had 12. The base value is 47. That's what you start at. And you subtract 1% for each dryer that exceeds 11. So we had 12, so we exceed 11 by 1, so it's 1%. So you simply take the 47, which is our base value, you take 1% away from that, and that makes this number now 46, right? So in that scenario, what you do now is you just add up the total VA, that's just 5,000 times 12, and then you multiply that by the new percentage, which is 46%, right? And that's how we got the value for the lesson. That's how we got 27,600, okay? Still a great question, Tino. And again, wording, this is one of those ones where the wording of how the table does it can make it complicated, okay? So there you go. All right. So that's how we got that number. So that's how we're up to speed on the electric clothes dryer, okay? All right. So let's move on to the cooking. So here we got the cooking. So it's hard for you to see. I get it. So I will dictate what we have. So what we have here is a electric range. And the electric range is 12 kW. Okay, now we're doing the standard method and we're doing the individual units right now in order to come up with a total overall value to use for our service or feeder for this 12 unit complex, okay? But we're just taking the numbers and then we're having to do all the math in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So this is 8. Now, we have our trusty Casio, okay? Old school Casio, been around a long time. There you go. Y'all know Mr. Casio, all right? Of course, we got Mr. Paul also doing the math, but let's see here. So if we're looking at range, here's what our form reminds us, right? Obviously, we can apply 220.55 because we are over 1,750 watts, okay? Or 1.75 kW. So if present, what does that mean? Well, that was just like the clothes dryer. If you have cooking appliances in your situation, you have to account for them. But you could have a unit in an apartment complex that is all gas, right? Well, if that's the case, you don't have to just make up a value for cooking. It's all gas. However, if the contractor puts in a receptacle for a range and they put in just a standard 50 amp, 40 amp, whatever they put in, nothing's going to be plugged into it. It's there. Be careful because now it is there. It is set up for it, and we have to account for that, even though it's not there, because it has permanent provisions are in place for cooking. All right, so be careful in how you do that. Most of the time, your engineer or design in a multifamily like this are probably going to already take that into consideration, but just be conscious of that. On an exam, for example, for those preparing for an exam, they're typically going to either tell you there's a range, and I have yet to see an example where there isn't a range or cooking equipment in the example, okay? It's pretty much people, they're not going to use a gas example, that type of thing. But just keep that in mind that cooking and clothes dryers are not a requirement in the National Electrical Code because you could have gas, all right? So just keep that in mind. But if it is, then you have to account for it. So in this case, we're going to use table 220.55 and all of the, of course, any applicable notes that we have as well. So let's go over to look at the NEC, and I will get us back here. And let's see. Okay, we're at the NEC, and we're going to go down here to 220.55. We're right here. All right. And so it obviously we're over 1 3/4, right? So, or 1,750 watts. So we're over that. So we know we can use the table. Now, interesting thing about the table, I'll expand this view real quick. We'll pin the header. Notice what this says, okay? And I know y'all can't see all of the table, so we'll scroll through it and we'll make it work. It says demand factors and loads for household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and other household cooking appliances that are over 1 3/4 kW. Just remember something. If you have some type of a cooking appliance that is not over 1 3/4, it's not like you forget about it, okay? It's not like, and I'm talking about real world here. It's not like you can say, "Ooh, it's not over 1 3/4." This is only the ability to use this table. If you have something that's considered a cooking appliance, right, and it is not over 1 3/4, you still have to account for the load. You can't just say, "Oops, it doesn't exist," right? You still have to account for it. All right, so you would add it just in your overall totals. Okay, you still have to keep that in mind, and you won't get to apply any demands to it because it's so small anyway. You just take it at full value and add it to your calculation. Okay, I think people get lost in that when they're like, Paul, well, what happens if I mean, hypothetically, what if I have a cooking appliance that is less, or that it's 1 3/4 or less? And they're like, how do I account for it? Well, you just add that load to your calculation. You just don't get to apply any demands to it. You just take it at full value. Okay, it's so small amount, but you still have to take it into consideration. It doesn't just disappear. Let's put it that way. All right. So now here's one of the most important parts of this to look at. Is right here. It says column C is to be used in all cases except as otherwise permitted in note 3. All right, note 3 is saying, well, if it's over 1 3/4 through 8 3/4 in lieu of method C, then I can use it. Now, in our case here, we're like, okay, we're not in column B. I can't make this thing go out to the right here. Okay. In our case, we're not in column B, right? So we're firmly in column C, right? So because ours tells us that it's a 12 kW range, right? So, but it's not over 12. It is exactly 12. It is not over 12. So that means we definitely can just pull straight from the column C. And we don't have to apply any notes. We just pull straight from column C. So in that case, I believe if we come down to 12 units right here. Okay. Show it on the screen. It's a little hard to see. All right, right here we see 12, and then we go all the way here over, and that's where we get the 27. And remember, this is in kW. So it's 27 kW is 27,000 VA, 27,000 watts. They're all synonymous. You know what I'm saying? They mean the same thing when it comes to these calculations. So that is where we got the 27,000 for our cooking, okay? And that is for 12 units, right? So that's where that comes from. Okay. The next thing that we're going to be looking at here is the air conditioning versus the heating. Okay? And we're going to have to break these all out to see which one that we would use and see whether they're correct. All right? Oops, sorry. Went too far there. All right. So let's look in and see here. So the heat at this point, let's look and see what the heat would be first. So it looks like we have the heat is 5,000, okay, at 240. Okay, so 5,000 is the watts, 5,000. And of course, we have 12 units. Okay, now, the other thing to remember is we have this air handler blower, and that is 3 amps at 115, because in our case, that air handler is going to blow the heat around. Okay, so we have to take those in. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, and we're going to see if this number is right, see if this is where we get you. All right, so I'm going to do 5,000 times 12 is 60,000, okay? So the 60,000 is the heat. Now, keeping that 60,000 aside, right? I'm now going to look at this air handler, 3 amps at 120. Since I have 3 amps at 115 volts, I'm going to use the 115, okay? Because that's what it gives me, even though people say, well, isn't that a motor? Don't you have to go look at the FLC? No, they gave me the 3 amps here. I'm going to follow here. They didn't give me a horsepower rating, so it means they did the math for you. So I'm going to do 3 times 115, and that is 345. And I'm going to do that times 12, and that is 4,140. Okay, so that's 4,140. And then I'm going to add the 60,000 for the heat back to that, because that's what it was. So I'm going to add 60,000 to it. Check me my math there, Paul. And that gives me 64,140. Okay, so that is my heat. Now, again, under the standard method, 220.60, what we're doing is we're comparing the heat versus AC, because these are non-coincident loads, okay? So they're thermostatically interlocked, okay? We didn't call it a heat pump. We didn't say anything. We didn't assume that, okay? And if you're unfamiliar with what we do with heat pumps, make sure you go watch my method that I did the standard a couple weeks ago. We did that, maybe a week and a half ago or 2 weeks, I can't remember, watch the Coffee Hour series on single family dwellings where I do give you an example of how to address a heat pump. Okay, we're not going to go in that today, but go watch it because I did explain it, and I don't want to get redundant and get off topic. But that's, there you go. All right, so in our case right here, we already know that obviously that's going to be the larger one because that's what we chose, but we have to compare it to the AC. So how do you do that? You do exactly what we did when we did the single family dwelling. Here, we already know the values for the 3VA, this one. So what you need to do is you need to get your good little scratch paper. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, the other one was easy. So I'm going to go 3 times 115 again. And that is 345, and that's just for one unit right now. That's the air handler. I'm going to do the air conditioning. I'm going to do 14. I'm going to do that times 230. Yes, I'm going to use the value in the question. I'm not going to use, hey, wait a minute. I know that the nominal is 240. No, use what they give you in the question. All right. So I'm going to do that times. So I'm going to go 14 times 230. And that's going to give me 3,220. And then I'm going to do condensing fan motor. And that is 2 amps at 115. 2 times 115. So that equals 230. So the total for one unit should be 345 plus 3220 plus 230 equals 3,795. Okay. All right. So that's one unit. All right. So now comparing the heat versus AC, one of the things that you have to do in the 2020 code and in the 2023 code is say, well, you know what? The heat is greater than the AC for a unit, right? Because the heat was, what was it? 5,345 per unit, but the AC was the lesser of the two. And if you go look at 220.61, it's a little exercise there that says, you know what, it's the lesser of the two, but you have to take, at that point, you take the largest motor of the lesser of the non-coincident load, which is obviously the air conditioning compressor, because this AC is less than the heat, and then you redo the math at 125%. So I'm going to take that 3220 times 1.25, and that gives me 4,025 plus the 345 plus the 230, and that gives me 4,600. Well, that is still less than the heat. So even at 125%, then the heat still wins. So I'm using the heat. Okay, is everybody clear with how you do that? And so it's also important for me to show you in the code where that is, because again, people say, I don't understand that, and I'm going to show you. This is for the 20. Now, if you're in the 2017, you can just skip all that little brain mental mesh that we just did, all that crap, and just go with the heat versus AC and go with whatever's larger. In the 2020 and 2023, you got to run through that little mental gymnastics. But here's right here. Here's where that talks about that 100. Now, I'll read it to you, and it'll make crystal clear. I say that, it says, if it's unlikely that two or more non-coincidental loads will be used simultaneously, and we're going to say ours aren't because they're thermostatically interlocked, that they're not. May not be the same for a heat pump if it has a defrost cycle or whatnot. So again, we're not talking heat pump here. It says, using only the largest loads that will be used at any one time and calculating the load for the feeder and the service shall be permitted. Okay, so that's why we're looking for the heat versus AC, because they won't be on at the same time, except for that air handler, because that's not a non-coincident load, right? Because it's going to be on if either one of them are running. So that's why we added it to both. Does that make sense? So it says if a motor or air conditioning load is part of a non-coincident load, and it is not the largest of the non-coincident loads, which our air conditioning compressor was not the largest load, it was the lesser because the heat was larger, right? So since it is, it says that I will take it at 125% of that motor load or air conditioning load, whichever is greater, shall be used in the calculation. So we redid it again. And we took that air conditioning motor, because it was the largest load, we took it at 125%, plus the sum of the condensing fan motor, plus the sum of the blower motor. And even after I did all that, it still wasn't more than the heat. So what does that mean? We go with the heat. Does that make sense? That's the way you do 220.60. And it does cause quite a bit of confusion for people. The wording. And I am not going to say that the 2026 edition makes it any more clearer than that. So the easiest way for you to understand this one, and this is what I tell students, if you can write in your code book, or if you're not preparing for an exam, you obviously can write in your code book. I usually will highlight this one in one color, and then I highlight this in a different color. And it's almost like they should have broken it down into bullet points in order to make it easier to follow, because the first one just tells you that you can take the larger of the two non-coincident loads. That's all the first sentence does. And then the second sentence tells you how to do the calculation in order to use that load for the contribution. Okay? Does that make sense? That's what it does, okay, in this scenario. Okay? All right. Just want to make it clear. All right, let's get back to the lesson. I hope it's clear anyway. All right. All right, the next one is the one that really does cause people a lot of heartburn, because they're looking for this language in the code. They're looking for something in the code to say, take the largest motor at 125%, or to capture that additional 25%. They're looking for something to say, hey, take whatever the motor was in the building that was the largest and add an additional 25%. They're actually looking for that, and it's not in the code. In that direct sentence, is in that wording, it's not in the code, but it is in the code. And so since you've already accounted for motors in our calculation up to this point, whether we applied an additional demand factor or not, it doesn't matter. We've accounted for all the motors, whether they're appliances, whether they're motors that, like the in-sink waste disposer was a motor, if it's a horsepower rating, we've already accounted for all that. So at this point, we need to hunt down the largest motor. Now, let me give you a thing to be aware of. In this scenario right here where we did the AC versus heat, if the AC had beaten the heat, I'm just using a hypothetical. If the AC had been larger when we used that air conditioning compressor at 125%, if it had been larger and we ended up going with the air conditioning load, we already added that 25% because we took the air conditioning motor at 125% and compared it to heat. And if the AC won, we already accounted for that 25%. We were done. We wouldn't have to do the next step we're getting ready to do. We'd be done. But since we took the heat and we discounted the air conditioning, we got rid of it. It's gone now. We just worked with the heat and we kept the heat. So we still need to find the largest motor. And this is the largest motor that may be running while the heat's running, right? So in this scenario, we have to hunt down the largest motor. Now, here's where it also screws with people's minds. I might have a 12-unit apartment complex. But guess what? I still only need to use one motor of the whole freaking complex. I don't have to take the largest motor and multiply it by 12. It's just one motor. And you might be thinking, well, that seems strange. But it's not really that strange, right? Because if you do a motor calculation and we go to 430.24 for motors, right, for feeders, what does it tell you? It says sizing the feeder and sizing the loads. What does it say? It takes the largest motor at its FLC at 125%. And then what does it say for motors? It says take the sum of the other motors, right? So you're really just trying to take the largest motor at 125%. Okay. Well, if you think about it, guys, that's what we're doing. We're just trying to find that large motor that we haven't taken at 125% yet so that we can capture that 25 missing percent. That's all we're doing. So in our case here, since we got rid of the AC, of the motors that are left, right, of the motors that are still left in play, All we have left, I believe, is the in-sink waste disposer. The microwave oven's not a motor. The dishwasher's not going to be used. That's an appliance that is all nameplate driven. It's not, doesn't have a horsepower rating typically. But we would look for the largest motor. And if you're doing a calculation on an exam, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the largest motor, typically going to be represented in a horsepower value. But let's see here. So in-sink waste disposer is 7.5 times 120 is 900. That is the largest motor that we would have. And we all know I think the best thing to remember here is typically, even in our example, it was given to you the total amps. You typically would not take the dishwasher at that value. But let's just say you did take let's just say you say, well, Paul, there's a motor in it. Okay. All right. So let's just say you did. The difference in the value is not significant. 900 versus taking the 10 times 120 is 1200. So you're basically, we're talking 300 VA divided by 120 is basically 2 amps. So at the end of the day, it's not going to make a significant difference, especially if you're sizing a service or feeder like that. But I can tell you, typically, we would typically not expect you to use a dishwasher as the other motor because of the way that is nameplated and things. It's just simply an appliance, that type of thing. Now, even though in-sink waste disposer is an appliance, and we applied it to 220.54, typically we're looking for things that have an HP rating or horsepower rating. It's typically how we would do it. Okay. Now, on an exam, my recommendation is it only takes 1 second to do this, so that if you go with the in-sink waste disposer and it doesn't match your totals on the exam and it looks like it's off a couple hundred, then just substitute the in-sink waste disposer with the next thing that you think is the largest motor, like a dishwasher, and see if the numbers line up. It only takes you a second. And remember, when it comes to calculations, what do I tell you? Wait until the last wave to do your calculations, okay? Don't let it bog you down, okay? So just compare on an exam. It only takes a second. But in the real world, look for the largest motor that would be a horsepower rating to do this, okay? And again, it's not going to make that big a difference in your overall scheme of your calc. All right, anyway, enough of that. Too much time on that. So we took 900, which is that in-sink waste disposer, and multiplied by 25% in order to get us 225 of additional VA. Very minimal in the scheme of life, but again, you have to account for it. And how do we do it? Because 220.50 directs us to things like 440.32. It directs us to 430.24. And all of those things are saying, take it at 125% in the sum of the other motors. That's how we did it. And that's how we got that 25 missing percentage, okay, from the largest motor. So that's what the 225 represents. All right. So the next thing we have to do is we have to add all of that up, okay? All of our values that we added up to this point, and it should add up to 223,045 in our values, okay? So anyway, let's see. I'm going to go and do that together so that we can get these numbers and make sure the math adds up. So with me, let's do this. So I'm going to write down, let's see here. We've got, remember these hashes? You don't add that value yet. That's just to write numbers down. So this was the first step we did, and we applied everything. We applied our demands, and then we added the 3,000 back. Okay, so our first number was 34,080. Okay, we did that. Our next number was to get our appliances, and that was 70,200. We did that. Okay, we applied the percentage. The next was the clothes dryer. That was 27,600. We did that. The household cooking, we again went to column C. That was 27,000 for 12. Okay. Now remember, if your cooking, like your electric range was, for example, 8 3/4 or 8, then you know what? You get to utilize column B instead of just column C because of note 3. Okay, just remember that. But all of ours were 12, so easy peasy. We did the AC versus heat, and the heat won, and that's how we got that number. And then we did the largest motor at 225. Okay, so we have all these numbers. Let's see if this all works out. We're going to try trusty Casio and see how Casio works. So 3480 plus 70,200 plus 27,600 plus 27,000 plus 64,140 plus 225. Okay, yep, 223,245. Mr. Casio nailed it. Okay, all right, so there you go. So that's what we got so far. All right, now, obviously the last, and Paul gives us the check, so he's checked the math. All right, so the last part is very simple, very easy to deal with. It is 223,000, and this is basically, this is what our form looks like for those that are not familiar with our form, okay? Again, I'll share the form. This is the form. You're basically filling it out piece by piece, and we're down now to 16, and we simply drop the totals down in here, right here in this form. We drop the total right here, and then we do the voltage right here, okay? There we go, all right? So let's get it back. All right, so there's what we got. So 223,245. Divide that by 240. That is our system voltage overall. We are using nominals, okay? And so then that equals 930 amperes, okay? Now, that is the minimum ampacity, right? So I have to have conductors that have a minimum of 930 amperes. Okay, whether you're using copper or using aluminum. Now, the amount of amps might dictate that I run parallel applications, right? Because the more parallel sets, again, it divides the ampacity amongst other conductors, and it will reduce the size of your parallel sets, okay? So that's the reason we parallel, in order to get more current at a location from point A to point B. We parallel it so we can evenly divide the current amongst multiple sets, right? And all the characteristics stay the same for paralleling, all that type of things. Same length, same conductive material per phase, all those type of things, okay? Same lengths, all that kind of stuff. All right. Now, when it comes to protection, so since we have a 930 amps, the first thing we look at, do we have an overcurrent protected device that is rated for 930 amps? Okay. Well, chances are we do not have one. Okay. So in this scenario, we still got to protect these conductors. Okay. So the minimum service that we'll be dealing with right here, minimum service is going to be 1,000 amp service. Okay. So that's what's going to be our minimum for this point to protect this service. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to see what it does. See, so you might say, well, how do I know how many to parallel? Well, you always want to use as least as possible, but also within realistic realms. All right. So let's just kind of show you what we're talking about here. So there you go. So now we know it's going to be 1,000 amp rated service. Okay. And we have a minimum ampacity of 930 amps. Okay. So then we get down here to sizing the conductors, right? So obviously, it tells us if the overcurrent device is rated more than 800 amps, and ours is, by the way, and this is all also given to you on the form, right? It says then the conductor's ampacity must be equal to or greater than the rating of the overcurrent device, and that tells us in 240.4c, okay? So it's 1,000 amp overcurrent device, so the conductors have to be equal to or greater than that. All right, so let's go and look at some ampacities real quick and see what we're dealing with. Okay, so let's go over here. Let's share this tab right here. And all right, let's go play around with some amps real quick and see what conductor sizes we need. Obviously, you guys know you can't use 310.12. We're outside of that realm between 100 to 400, and we're doing a multifamily, so we're outside of that. It's not going to be applicable to the overall service of this building, so we can't do that. Y'all know that. All right, so let's go to 310.16 and see. Let's see here. So 310.16, We'll see how this works out. Let's pop this up. Let's expand this table. Okay. We'll look at it the best way we can see. We'll just make sure here. Okay. So we're going to assume copper. Obviously, we assume copper unless stated otherwise. And so I'm going to first say, you know what? Since the rating of the overcurrent device is rated 1,000 amps, I'm going to do 1,000 first. I'm going to do 1,000 divided by 2. Just for craps and giggles. Well, I don't really need to do 1,000 divided by 2 because I think we all know what that is, but I'll do it. That's 500. So I'm going to come down here. And again, we're not making any adjustment or correction at this point because nothing was given, right? Okay. So let's see here. Somebody asked on Instagram when I start these. We always are 8 a.m. Eastern time. 8 a.m. Eastern time every morning. You can watch the replay at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Okay? That we have a 5 p.m. replay, typically. All right, so I'm going to go down under the 75. Not going to use the 90 because there was no adjustment and corrections involved. So I'm going straight to the 90. Okay. And let's see here. In order to get the 500, it looks like I could run a 900 kc mil. Well, I can tell you that is not practical to run two 900s. All right. That is not practical to do so. Right. So let's get something a little more practical. Right. And all right, so now on an exam, they may give you conductor sizes. They may say 2 parallel 900s. They might give you something else. If it's plausible, I mean, obviously at 520, 2 sets of 900s will give me what? 1,040. Obviously, that's adequate to handle the 1,000. That's not an issue, right? But let's see if we have a better, more manageable option to do this. Okay, and we're talking just real world scenarios here. So let's say, okay, well, I want to take that 1,000 and I'm going to divide it by 3. And that is 333 amps now. So that's going to significantly drop me down. 333. It looks like I'm at 335. All right. If that shows up, it is hard for you guys to see it. So let me unpin that and bring this back up. So there we go. There is a 400 kc mil at 335. All right. Well, 335 times 3 is 1,005. That is the most efficient. So I am not wasting amps. Okay. Now, in the scheme of life, if you'd rather run 2 sets of 900s, I know that these hands don't. I know that I don't. I have worked with 900. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. I'd rather run an additional raceway and be able to drop my stuff down to a 400 kc mil. That's just me. Okay. How many of you out there give me a whoop whoop on that? Because you don't want to run 2 sets of 900 and think that you're going to get it in a raceway. I don't even want to think about it. You know, it's not something I want to do. All right. So again, you go to the next plausible, and that would be 3 sets. So that would be 400. Okay. And we did the same thing for the aluminum. Same scenario. You would just simply go to the aluminum scale and do the same thing. We don't need to do that because it is, in that case, it will be the equivalent to that would be a 600 kc mil aluminum. So it's going to be 3 parallel sets is what is going to be the best possible answer. And it gets us the closest to the 1,000 amps. Okay. It gets us closest to the 1,000 amps without really wasting anything. We're only 5 amps over. Okay. Easy peasy. All right, so let's see. What's next? Okay, now the neutral. Okay, so the neutral is interesting in this one because remember all that stuff we just did for the calculation? We get to do this. You take all those values, right? And you use this for the neutral. And this may or may not be accurate. Let's see if it's accurate real quick, okay? Van says he didn't know you can run 3 sets. Oh yeah, the beautiful thing about paralleling is that I can run 3 sets. Hell, I could run 4 sets. And that would even reduce it even smaller as far as sets. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to install the raceway. Yeah, you have to do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, you know, maybe that's what your company stocks more of. Maybe that's the wire that's the go-to. It's small. So take that 1,000 and divide it by 4 and you do 4 sets if that's what you want. That's what we do when we have big services, right? Big feeder applications and big big situations where we need to parallel out. Then that's really the only way to achieve it, right? That type of thing. Yeah, in the real world, where the cost of the 2 9s costs more than the 3 4s, I think it's probably would be less probably for the 3 4s. But if you think about it, you have the increased cost of the raceway, the increased cost of labor that you would need. Think about the raceway. I haven't done a raceway fill. That's a good exercise for somebody to do, is see what it would be for all of the 900s in something like three. In this case, it's single phase, so 2 hots of 900, and you have to compare the costs, that type of thing. Estimating software would probably compare it. But I think the back-breaking issue of trying to run 900s versus running something as simple as 400s, probably at the end of the day, this is why everybody parallels. I don't see a whole lot. I'm in the wire and cable industry. I don't see a whole lot of 900 applications being run. And I mean, tell you what, it's not the biggest what we sell, right? We make all the way up to 1,000 kc mil, right? I would see more of 400s sold. So it's probably a supply and demand thing. Now, as far as copper weight, I don't know. That could play a difference, but I can tell you 900 is more than twice, okay, the circular mill of a 400, okay? So if you think about it, a 400, you could have 4 400s that would be less than the weight of 2 900s. That makes sense. So again, weight-wise, it probably works out, okay? Yeah, PVC, but again, think of the PVC would still be big. It's still got to labor. You still got to install it, that type of thing. All right, now I know y'all guys can't see this, but what I wanted to point out, regardless of the numbers, here's what I want to point out about neutrals. And y'all saw this when we did the single family thing, and I know you can't see this, so let's listen to me. Let's listen to me. The general lighting value doesn't change. The same thing that we just did to size the service conductors, you use that exact number when it comes to the general lighting and general use receptacles. Why? Because all of those are 120 volt loads. So they have neutral contribution, okay? Right? So you keep that number. So we had the 34,080 for that general lighting and general use after we applied all the demands and everything. You get to apply those demands again for the neutral, right? What's good for the goose is good for the gander, they say, right? So you get to use all that, okay? So that's the first part. You get to use it all. Next, when it comes to the fastened in place appliances, then you get to use all of those values again, except you take out the water heater. Why do we take out the water heater? Well, we take out the water heater because that's a 240 volt load, right? All of the other loads are 120 volts or 115 volt loads. So that means they have what? They have a neutral contribution, right? So you add up all of those numbers, and as you can't see on the screen, but we get to add up. So that was the 1440 for the dishwasher. That was for all 12 of them. The waste disposers, that was 10,080. So we add all of them. And then the microwave oven was 14,400. We still get to keep all that. And we still have what? Over 4 or more appliances. We just took off the water heater because that's a 240 volt load. But everything else is a neutral load. So we account for those. We have to keep that. So the total is 39,600. That's for all of the appliances, okay? Now we get to also still, even though this is a neutral calculation, we still get to apply the 75%, okay? So we take that 39,600 and we multiply it by 75%. And that gives us 29,700. If you don't believe me, let's do the math. 39,600 times 0.75. So it's 39,600 times 0.75. And it equals 29,700. So that is correct, okay? Now, the clothes dryer application. Remember what we had our value for the clothes dryer, right? I'll switch back here real quick and show you that clothes dryer. Right here, 27. So we take that 27,600 times 0.70, because that is the value we used in our calculation, right? So we'll go back here so you can see it. And that is where we use the 19,320. So we took the value that we calculated, even after we applied the demands, we take that value for the clothes dryer, we multiply that by 70%. Now, where do you get that allowance? Well, that allowance is 220.61 that tells us to say, hey, I'll let you take an additional 70% application. I'll let you apply additional 70% to this load. I know that you already did the math. I know that you already used table 220.54, but I'm going to let you do a little, I'm going to let you get another one. I'm going to let you multiply it again. I'm going to let you use 70%. And that's the neutral. Because there are neutral contributions in clothes dryers and ranges. Right? That's why we run 4 conductors to it, because there is a neutral contribution in there. All right, so that's 19,320 for that. Now, what about that range? Well, remember the value we used for the range, which was 27,000, right? Well, we do that, and we do that times 70%, and that's going to give us 18,900. So that's where that value comes from. Again, 70% of the value that we calculated during our standard process, right? Makes sense? All right, now, heat and air conditioning compressor. They don't contribute to neutral loads because they're 240 or 230 volt loads, so they don't contribute. So we get rid of those. Okay, now, here's where it gets interesting. Even though when we were doing the hot conductors, we compared the heat versus AC, and if the heat was larger than the AC, we got rid of the AC, right? That's for doing that. That's not how it works for the neutral. When it comes to the neutral, you have to account for all neutral loads. So even when the AC is running, you've got the air conditioning condenser motor and you've got that air handler blowing. Those were neutral loads, so I have to account for them, right? So for my neutral, so the air handler, we account for that. 3 times 115, which was the voltage, times there was 12 of them. And that was 4,140 because we had 12 units, right? Now that condensing fan, that was 2 times 115 VA because that's what it gave us in the question, right? As you can see over here, right? 2 times 115. And it was 12 units, so that was 2,760, right? Okay, because every unit has a neutral contribution, right? So there we go with that. So in that scenario, we just add those because those are the neutral contributions to all of the apartment complex, right? And there's no comparison here. We're just taking all neutral loads, just adding them up. And the last one is, yes, you still have to account for that largest motor. But guess what? It's only the largest motor with a neutral contribution because that's what we're sizing, the neutral. Okay, don't overthink it. You don't go looking for 240 volt loads or the motor like the air conditioning compressor motor because that's a 240 or 230 volt load. That doesn't have a neutral. So we're only looking for largest. Well, it's going to be the same one that you used prior, right? More than likely. So in this case, it was 900 for that in-sink waste disposer or garbage disposer. And do that at 25%. Again, it's that same 225. That is the exact same value that we used before. That is our neutral contribution. And we have to do math on all of these and see what we come up with. So it's 34,080 plus the 29,700 plus the 29,700 plus the 19,320 plus the 19,320 plus the 1,890 or 18,900 plus the 4140 plus the 2760. If you got any questions, make sure you ask them now. Forever hold your peace. And then you add that 225. That's 109,125. This is Mr. Cassio. Got it right. That's what we have right here. And that is the neutral contribution. Now, the same thing that we did before, we're going to simply divide that by 240, and that gives me 454.7. Okay, so I'm going to just double check that. Divide that by 240. And that is absolutely 454.68, right? So we're going to do that. So we're going to round this to 455. So we have 455 amps of neutral. Thank you, Paul. I'm surprised that you can even see that. I appreciate it. So that gives us 455 amps. Now, here's what's interesting. Because we have a neutral amount, check this out. Now, this is funny. This is funny, guys, because this only applies in the 2020 or the 2023 NEC, okay? Because of the verbiage, because of some stupid little and or that's in there. I've got to show you this, okay? I just have to show you that because this can make a difference in your calculation depending on which model you're in the Fast Tracks program. Watch this. Let me go back to the NEC, okay? Of course, the NEC is not working now. Okay. All right. Typical thing, it's not working. So I'm going to go here and let's see if I can't make it work. Y'all might see it, but I'm going to have to add it again and let's see if it makes it work. All right. Looks like it might be here now. It just goes away and comes away. So as long as you can see it, I need to make sure I can see it. All right. So, all right. So I think we're here. I think it's working. Let me go to... You'll see I've gotten used to this thing messing up now. So I'm like more nimble in the fact that it messes up more frequently. All right, so let's go to 220 real quick. I got to show you this. I am going to show you both of them because this is kind of cool. Oh, and incidentally, this is all part of our calc, but I do have to show you this stuff. All right, see right here in 220.61, right? You see right here, hopefully y'all can see the screen. All right, you go down here in permitted reductions. Now, you see, we already did this, right? We already took, remember that 70% in our calculation that we took it to get the size of the conductor? We already did this, right? And then it allows for you to be able to have an additional unbalanced load in excess of 200 amps. And that's what we're going to do right now. But see this right here that's grayed out, this and? See that right there? And a portion. This allows you to do both, use the 70% and also account for the amount of unbalanced load that's over 200. That's the 2023 code. See how this is a little new here? New? Let me show you this in previous editions. Watch this. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go to 220 first. This is so cool. I mean, well, it's not cool because it screws you. But I do want to show you how this works. So I'm going into 2020 edition now. By the way, we're using link in case anybody wants to know. So here we're in 2020 edition. You can tell right here. Okay. Let's go down to the same thing here. See this? So in the 2020, look what it says right here. What does that say? That says or. Blow your mind, right? So in this scenario is I can either do the 70% that we did in this one, and we already did that in our calculation. That's how we came out with 109,125 because we applied the 70% to the range and the clothes dryer, right? If I did that in my calculation, then I can't use this one for the excessive amount that may be over 200. Why? Because of this or. I either have to use B1 or B12. Isn't that crazy? So in the 2023, they changed this or to the and because you should have the ability to apply both of these in your overall service calculation. But that is not how it's written in the 2020 or the 2017. Okay, so that or is important. So those that are in the Fast Tracks program, sometimes they can get confused with when and when, okay? And so at the end of the day, that or, so you've heard me say this before, the power of the and in the or. It can make a difference. Whether something says and, which means you can do this, and you do that, or says you do this, or you do that, okay? Now, how would you do this when you have the or? Well, most people are going to apply the 70% during their neutral calculation, for example, to the ranges in clothes dryers. However, you could skip that and not use the 70% and just take the full value that you calculated during the standard method, and then you come up with your full amount, and then you multiply it down, and whatever your amps are, then you can just apply the B2 instead of the B1 and see which one yields the smaller neutral conductor. You could do that if you wanted. I think most people, when they're doing a neutral calc, they just take the range at range value for the neutral at 70%. And then they take the clothes dryer at 70% of whatever they calculated out using the standard method, and they roll with it, right? But I just think it's important to show you, is most people have never probably shown you that before, that is important, the and or the or. And so you probably learned something new today. You probably didn't know that. And it can make a big difference, that scenario, because if you apply both B1, 220.61 B1 and B2, and you're in the 2020 code, that would be wrong because of that or that's in there. Now, go to the 2023, and guess what? Now it's and. And we're doing our calculation based on the and in the 2023, okay? With that said, we've already applied the 70% here, right? I know, Tino said, they love the code. They make it so easy. Well, we try to make it better each cycle. We try to make it easier. We rely on input from people like you out there. Every time the code changes, we rely on input to try to get it right. I think it should have always been allowed to apply both. And it just, all we did is come full circle in 2023 and make it factual that it's the way it is, okay? All right, so let me get my code book back to 2023 in case we need to go there anymore. Let's see here. Let me go on and get us back where I was at real quick. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, so here we are. All right, so we were at 455 amps. I know y'all can't see it, but that's what we got. We took 109,125, divided that by 240, and we ended up at 455 amps. Now, let's take that 455 amps and take 200 away, because we're also now going to apply 220.61 B2. So we take that 200 away. Don't worry, we're going to use it later. We just set it to the side, okay? All right, so we take that 455 amps. So what we've got is 255 amps of neutral current in excess of 200. So we're able to apply 70% to that 255 amps. That's what it said in 220.61 B2. It says we can do that. So we take that 255, multiply that by 0.70, and that gives me 178.5. That 0.5, remember 220.5 in the 2023 allows us to go up to the next size. So we're going to round that up to 179 amperes, okay? And just so you see Mr. Casio, right there. All right, so we have 179 amps of neutral load that is over 200. But remember, we have to add that original first 200 back, okay? Because we only applied the 70% to the amount that was over 200. So the 200 is our base. So we add that 179 back to the 200. And so now we have 379 amps of minimal neutral ampacity, okay? And so that was a big difference, isn't it, from our original calculation, which was 455. That allowance in 220.61 has allowed us to drop that neutral down to 379, right? Now, you and all know what's coming next. Always remember, since we paralleled the phases, and that was 3 sets, remember that's what we did, we're required to also mutually parallel the neutrals. So I have to have a neutral in each of those raceways, okay? So we're sizing that neutral for each of those raceways. So in this case, I'm going to take that 379 because that's the amps we need. I'm going to take 379 and I'm going to divide that by 3, and that's going to give me 126.3. Okay, there you go, 126.3. So we're going to be able to drop the 0.3. What's up, John? Thanks for joining us from Orlando. And that gives us 126 amps per neutral conductor, okay? So in that scenario, we're going to go back to the NEC, and it's not working. Okay, at least it's not working for me. Good old link. So we'll bring it back up, and I'll see if I can make it work again. And we're back over here on it. And let's see here. So that scenario, we're going to go back to 310.16. And let's find that neutral. Okay. All right, we're doing copper. Let's stick with copper. All right, so in this scenario is on the 75, I need a conductor that is 126 amps. All right, so let's go down and let's see what we need for our minimum ampere per neutral. All right, so let's kind of look and see what we got to look at first. So we're going to look at a couple things real quick first. All right, so the first thing we got to remember, see down here, it looks like you would say, it looks like you and me would say, hey, Paul, it looks like the size that you need would be a 1 gauge because it's good for 130 amps. I know that somebody's got to say that, right? They're going to say, hey, Paul, it's 1 gauge, bro. But you remember the rules for paralleling? Hey, you guys remember, this is where you get caught on an exam because you know 1 gauge is going to be there, right? Remember the rules of paralleling? When you parallel, they can't be smaller than what? 1/0. So the default's going to be 1/0, even though the size would have been 1 per the table. Because of the paralleling rules, it can't be smaller than 1/0. And where do we see that in the code? And that's going to catch many people in that scenario, right? So many people are going to be like, what the, that type of scenario. But that can catch you. So that would be a minimum requirement, right? So again, did that catch anybody? Did that throw off anybody in that application? Probably not. But again, just in case it does, and I will share it with the code to see if it is still working. It's not working, of course. And you could probably see it, but I can't see it. So we're going to redo this over again. As you can see, I've become quite nimble at just doing this. So let's just go back over here. And here we're at 310.10. And you see G for parallels. And you see right here, this language. Bear with me. It'll come up on the screen. It's a little delayed for some of you. May come back up on the screen. I don't know. Do y'all see the code book? I don't know. Somebody let me know if they can see the code book because it's not seems to not be refreshing over on the other channels. Blank screen. All right. So let's see here. Let's do this again. Let's see if we can add it here. And let's see if it, does anybody see the code book here? No code book? All right. Anybody else? Nope, no code book. Oh, so it is really gone messed up here. So let's see here. Let's see here. All right, no code book there. So, all right, luckily for us, we're at the end. So, guess what's happening? It is my software, and it looks like this is going to be a regular thing, guys, for our coffee hour, because EVMux can't. They say it's my upload. It's my Starlink cannot handle the bandwidth, is what they say. So it's all gone blank screen. So as long as you can see me, that's all that's important. Is if you go look at 310.10G. In the 2023 edition, you'll see where it demands that the parallels be what? That the parallels be at least 1/0. Okay? So that's why it's a minimum of 1/0 for our calculation. Okay? So, all right, so let's just get back to the lesson because at least that you probably can see. All right? All right, so we're back to the lesson, and hopefully y'all can see the lesson screen if that isn't nulled out. All right. So now we have all these sizes. Okay, we have a 400 kc mil copper. We have a 1/0 copper for the neutral, right? At the end of the day. Okay. Next, we have to size that grounding electrode conductor, right? So in our example, we didn't say what type of electrode it was. We didn't say it was ground rods. We didn't say it was ground ring. We didn't say it was concrete case electrode. We didn't say nothing about what it was, right? So y'all all know, what do you do when it says nothing? Then you use the default. You go to the table, right? 250.66. If it's a default, that's where you go. All right. And in 250.66, and I don't even need to go to the code book here because I know that it's not going to show it for me. So if you go to 250.66 and you go to the table, and we're going to go right to the table. Why? Because we're not going to be able to use 250.66 A, B, or C, which was for rod, pipe, or plate, or concrete case electrode, or ground ring, because it was nothing here for that. It didn't tell us what type of electrode to use. So we're going to the table, okay? All right, so we go to 250.66, and I go to the table, and you're going to use the size of the conductors that supplied it. In our case, since we had 3 parallel sets, right? So we had 3 parallel sets of 400, didn't we? So that is 400,000 times 3. And so that's 1,200,000 circular mils, right? So that's what you do when you go to table 250.66. You either, if you have a single conductor, you use that circular mil. If you have parallel sets, you do what's called the equivalent area. So you basically take, if I have 3 sets, you just take one phase, let's just say A phase, or let's just say A, and you add up, that one was 400 plus the A in the next raceway is 400 plus the A in the next raceway is 400. You add them all together, you just take one phase from each set, and that equals 400 plus 400, 400. That is 1,200,000 circular mils, okay? And so then you go to 250.66, and you go down and you say, okay, is it over 1,100 kc mil? Well, yeah, it's 1,200 kc mil, or 1,200,000. We just did it. We added 400 plus 400 plus 400. So we're going to be at the bottom one, and that is going to be a 3/0 copper. Okay, so that is going to be the size that we need to do. Okay, so we're back here, and that's the 3/0. And the same thing would be a 250 for the aluminum. Okay. All right. Let's give away some stuff here. If any of that doesn't make sense to you, let me know, and I will cover anything that you might be confused on. Let's go on and do some giveaways real quick. Let's go. Another month, guys, and I'll have faster speeds, and then we can even add some other features that I don't use now because it's very bandwidth. Don't worry. Coffee Hour is going to get better because we're going to get faster. I've already guaranteed they're installing it, so it's just got to wait right now. So, all right, David Scott. All right, David, let's see what you get. The drawing is in a couple weeks, folks, so we're getting close. Make sure you do the #win. Okay, and we get in here. Adam says no. All right, so let's go. Let's see what you win. You're in on the, still haven't fixed the estimating. What am I? What the hell? I'm a slacker. All right, so estimating software. You're in the drawing for that. It's nearly, I think, a $4,000 software for bidding and estimating. Okay, it's great. So you're in that drawing. Whether you want it, share it, sell it, whatever, resell it, I don't know, but you're in the drawing for it. All right, so hopefully good luck. All right, let's do this again. Let's spin again. See who else we can get in on it. And I'll let you know if you win because we'll have a special show, and then I'll list all the winners and that type of thing. So don't worry. We'll even have a special drawing show. Maybe we'll do a 2-hour evening one. Maybe we'll do the drawing. Okay. Well, the drawing's supposed to be on the 31st. So maybe we'll do a 2-hour show on the 31st. All right, and we'll just pick the names out of the hat. All right, Richard Geiger. I'll let Darlene pick names out the head. Y'all get to meet Darlene. Okay. All right. So there you go, Richard Geiger. All right. So let's see here. Let's see what you get, Richard. Oops. Spin it and go. You don't parallel the GEC. paralleling. That was using table 250.66 where it tells you to add the summation of the sets. So since you had 3 sets, we're just adding the 400, 400, and a 400 together so we can use the GEC table. We weren't paralleling the GEC. We're using the parallels, at least one phase of the parallels, to come up with a total value to be able to use in table 250.66. That's all we did, Van Man. We didn't parallel the GEC. You can't parallel the GEC. We just use the numbers from the parallel to get us a summation to use in that table. Go look at the table, 250.66, and look at the heading of that table. And you'll see what it says when it says equivalent parallel or equivalent area. Basically, that's taking those 3 sets, taking one conductor, which is, let's say, A, and adding all of the A's of each set together to act like one conductor. Because that's really what we do when we parallel. We're trying to add multiple conductors together at each end to make it act like one large conductor. That's what we're talking about. Does that make sense? But we didn't parallel, okay? We didn't parallel the GEC. We just used those numbers to size the GEC. All right, Richard, minimalist wallet. Okay, you in the drawing for the wallet. Okay, so again, if you win, you can choose which one you want from our website. Okay, so there you go. All right, let's do it again. I'm going to catch up on these giveaways because I'm running behind. I'm going to have to lose my lunch today. JPB. All right, JPB, let's spin it and see what you win. All right, JPB, let's see what you're in for here. Yeah, license plate. All right, well, if you win that, you get to choose from these engraved license plates that we have on our website. Okay. All right. One more here. Let's get this recycled. Let's go. Let's do another spin. Uri A. All right, Uri A. Let's see what you get. Let's go. Tina said, just give me the money. I don't know anything about that, Tino. I don't keep track of the NCCER thing. I haven't really looked much into that. Okay, Ohm's wheel coin. All right, you're in the drawing for an Ohm's wheel, master or journeyman or whatever. You get to pick whatever you want if you win that drawing. All right, guys. Great lesson today. It was a lot of information that we covered in that. So now tomorrow, we're going to be doing this again, but we're going to be going over a 6-unit complex so you can see the difference in a 6-unit complex. Again, this is so that we hammer this in your head. Same process, same stuff. Everything's the same. The only difference is we're going to substitute the 12 with the 6. So I expect tomorrow to go quicker. Okay. All right. So anyway, there you go, folks. Thanks for joining me today. I will catch you on tomorrow. Make sure you join us. If you want to take a break and not join us tomorrow, because the only difference is we're using 6 versus 12. If you don't want to join me, I understand, but I'd love to see you here. All right. Because again, that's where we get our coffee on. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. I appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. God bless.